The first thing you need to be aware of with regards to dealing with the command module is that this thing is what you need to set the command module on when you're working with it. And I always put paper towels over it so that the edge won't mar the paint. So this is the command module, and the only feature you need to be aware of at this point is that this piece pulls forward to set the EVA pod in position like it's going to be launching. The EVA pod comes off. It simply pulls off. There's a plug here that fits in a jack here, and you can snap it back in place. I don't have the power connected right now, but when this thing is set in place, the lights just come on if the power's on. Okay, I'm going to push this back in. The back side here has these little block things in the opening. Those engage the, I guess you'd call them teeth, on the collar, on the neck part. This is called the collar here. Now the collar is removable. It has to be taken on, or it has to be removed so that you can get the interiors out. In your case, you'll be putting them in. So I'm going to do this in reverse, since everything is in place right now, so that you can see how things come out once they've been put in. That way the whole thing is understood for, you know, either putting them in or taking them out. You've seen both. One thing that needs to be pointed out is on the collar there is this group of 4 blocks that is at the top, the very top. When the collar is in place, these are at the very top of the model. And in this block here there's a cut. That cut lines up with this division in these 2 panels here. That is the top dead center reference. So that has to be, this puts the collar in the correct position so that the screws that hold the collar in place are all in the right spot. Okay, I've removed the screws with a screwdriver. It's just a Phillips screwdriver. And those screws are located directly at the bottom and over in this area here. And this piece, the collar, comes off. The area where the screws that were taken out are indicated by the circles here and here. There are a number of holes in this rim, and I've figured out that these are the only 3 you need to use. So that is removing the collar. So what we have here, and I'm sorry for the bad lighting, the interiors are, there's 2 interior pieces. All the interior pieces have plugs here at the bottom. The first one, they're labeled pod bay, which is this big section here. The flight deck, which is this upper section here. And the EVA pod, which is the little piece I showed you earlier that's on the little arm that runs in and out. The EVA pod has extra wire. Here's the plug. And in the middle of this wire there are these little connectors that I made out of brass tubing. You have to disconnect, you just pull on it, the brass tubing. One of them is insulated by a vinyl sleeve, so if they ever touch, there won't be a short. The reason that this has to be disconnected is because you need to remove the slider that the pod is on, and these wires feed all the way through here, and then this simply pulls out this way, and you set this aside. Now, this is the flight deck. there's only one thing that holds the flight deck in place, and that is a pin, this brass pin that runs from one side all the way over to the other. And all you have to do is pull that pin out. That pin engages some a device here that keeps the flight deck from moving around. And to remove the flight deck, all you do is you pull it toward you gently. It'll disengage at the front, and then you tip it and carefully remove it thusly. So these plastic fins are the guides for these plastic fins, and these notches, this notch here and here, engage the window section, the inside surface of the window section, which you will see better than on this video, sticks into the interior space here. So this thing is it fits nicely. You have to fuss with it just a little tiny bit in order to get things to clear. This piece up here at the top is a particular problem, but it's not really a problem. Anyway, you stick this in until those notches in the window engage that window section on the inside, and then these little fins here. Now you have to push this thing forward. There are some mounting guides at the ends on the inside that those little the outermost parts of the window area have to fit between. Once you've done that, then it's in correct position laterally, and as long as you've pushed this thing in so it doesn't go anymore, you're there, and you can re-engage this pin. It's somewhat problematic, but I just did it. So anyway, that's how the window section works, the flight deck. Okay. Now, the pod bay here is it fills up a great deal of the space on the inside, but it does come out quite easily. The only thing that you will find that is going to concern you is this thing here. This is a paper piece, and the reason it's paper is it needs to be kind of flexible so it can give, because it'll want to snag on this rim. But to get this thing out, it's seated in this gray tubular section here, and all you do is you lift up, put your fingers here and your thumb up here, and you can lift this thing up. It has engaged that tubular section. There's a you'll see it in a second. There's a piece on the bottom, this thing here. It's kind of bulky, but it's what sits in that tube and keeps everything registered. So once you've got that thing loose, you rotate it, and the edge of this paper thing will scrape against the opening. It won't collapse or anything. Everything's fine. It comes out quite nicely. You want to pick the cable up so that it's on top, and you're going to tilt this thing so that this is the very back, and underneath that is where that puck is, which is this thing. Yeah, so you can see that. There's a little angled part on that puck that's what I had to file off in order to get this thing to clear. So you tip it like this, and you simply pull it out. It does scrape a tiny amount, not a lot, but it doesn't hurt anything to do that. Okay, so that's how you get the piece out. Now I'll show you how to put it in. It's the exact same thing in reverse. The reason you take this cable and put it on top is because if it's draping over this way, it'll interfere with getting this thing in and out. So you flip it over like that, and you can grab this thing anywhere. It's not delicate. So I've got a hold of it here. I have a hold of this, and by the way, this is flat here. That's the surface that scrapes going into the opening. So put it on an angle, hold on to the top, and it'll slide in, and then you turn it, and you have to make sure that the top of this piece remains underneath the window section, because otherwise it interferes. And then you rotate it, and the puck drops into the gray tube. And once it has done that, that's it. So this remains loose, you might say. Just its weight keeps it in place, and it can't turn because it's wedged in there. So that's how that happens. And then, of course, all the other parts, once they're back in place, you take these plugs, and they have their own little spot labeled. Actually, the label doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which hole you plug these things into, except you don't want to plug it in on the right side here, because that's where the power plug goes. But they're labeled, so you plug them in, and everything will be fine electrically. Okay, I think I've covered that well enough that we can move on. Oh, to reiterate about this piece, these little tubular sections are color-coded, red and black, and the corresponding little pins that get stuck in need to go into the proper color, because the diodes for the lighting have polarity. So this is the only place where this particular problem exists. So once you've plugged them in to the proper color, the red piece to the red piece here, once everything's back in place, you want to be sure to slide this little vinyl sleeve back in place, because these are the same length, and these two brass thingamajigs could come into contact, and you don't want that, because that'll short it out. It won't hurt anything, it'll just short it out. Okay, the rest of the model is in one piece as we do this video, and you will notice that there is a little bit of a sway to the spine. I assure you, I had this thing completely mounted and suspended, and it hangs as straight as an arrow. So don't have any concerns about that. The reason I'm going into it now is because I have to take this thing down to get it packed up. But anyway, this is the thing in the front. There's two of them, one here and one over here, that the cable's attached to. They just simply loop around it. There's no, you can undo them quite easily. I can't right now because I'm only one person and this thing's heavy. But the thing to note here is that this panel on top simply lifts off, and that gives you access to the interior, which has the little screw there that I've discussed before. This screw here, that simply keeps the spine tube from slipping in and out. On the inside here, I don't know if this camera can pick it up, but you will see those threaded spuds. Those come through from the back side where the engines are, and there is a right now I have only one nut holding them in place. There's three. There's another one located over here. I can't see what I'm pointing this at, so bear with me, but I can see that the center one is in the shot, and I have a nut and a washer on that. You can put on all three, or you can put on one. It doesn't really matter. They aren't coming off when only one is there. So the other thing to note is that this is the collar piece. I'm sorry, this is the neck piece. The collar is what we took off the command module. It has the power connection here. And the reason I'm showing you this is because the suspension cable has to go around the, there's a metal fitting inside there, which you can see the cable going around. That metal is what is, that's where the tube passes through. You can see the end of the tube here. so that the front of the model is suspended only from one spot, and you can't suspend this by putting the cable just around these pieces. It must go around that center piece of metal, that mount. And on the other side, I don't know if the camera can see it, but on the other side, you can barely see it in the dark there, there's a screw. And that screw must be tightened so that the front of the model doesn't disengage all by itself. And of course, this is the power connection that has to be made. Excuse me. This is the power connection that has to be made to the command module before you put the command module on. As I pointed out earlier, these are these little blocks engage the teeth, I guess you'd say, of the collar. I'm sorry, the neck. This is the collar. So I will demonstrate how this engages, just referencing the power connection, which is the top of the neck piece here. So it's kind of hard to show from your angle, but anyway, oh, I know what I can do. I didn't screw this back into place, so I'll just pull this off. Okay. This is the top, the 4 blocks, and this is the top where the power connection is. And all you have to do is engage the system. Whoops. There we go. You can see how this fits together, and then with this mounted on the spine and everything, when you engage this, I should say, when you engage this to the command module assembly, then you give the command module a bit of a twist, like that, and that will that engages the blocks to these teeth. You can see how they fit. I'll rotate that. See that? You can do this at home.